Welcome back to a special edition of Spicer and Company. We're here in Florida at the Villages for a town hall with the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis.
All right, without further ado, the governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Well, Governor, thanks for being here. Thanks to the Villages for hosting us. It's amazing to be in a room of people for the first time in a while. For those of us not from Florida, as we mentioned before, you've lifted COVID restrictions. Almost everyone in this room is vaccinated because of the rollout that you've conducted here in Florida. We got a lot to get to today. We're going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about veterans. We're going to talk about education and hopefully a little bit of religious liberty. That's
right. But first, we want to talk about COVID. And we want to take a question from the audience. We have Marlene, who's a former IBM executive. She has a question about COVID. Marlene.
First, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of all the work you've done with COVID and the rapid release of the vaccine to Florida. And I really think the whole room thanks you for that. We also appreciate your attention to Florida and not your next job. My question, Governor, is, have there been other states that have contacted you to ask about how you did it here in Florida?
Great question, and first just let me say how happy I am, as always, to be at the Villages. And it's great to welcome Spicer and Company here, although, full disclosure, Newsmax as a company is actually headquartered down in Palm Beach County, and so we're proud of that. Maybe you guys can move down and start doing your. I'm telling you, you would have had a better year for sure. So I have talked to some governors, maybe not as many as you'd expect, and what I would always try to tell them is, you got to look at the data yourself. You can't just subcontract out leadership to some health bureaucrat. A lot of these health bureaucrats wanted to close everything indefinitely. That's just how they see the world. But I kept going back. If you look at Eisenhower's farewell address, a lot of people remember military-industrial complex. He was right about that too. But he actually warned about as science and government become more intertwined, as you have a scientific elite emerge in society, a leader can't just simply let policy be captive to whatever some credentialed expert says. A leader's got to take... A leader's got to take cognizance of everything that's going on in society, all these different competing factors, and then you make decisions. And ultimately, people they elected me in Florida as governor. They didn't elect a bureaucrat. They elected me to make these decisions. And so I had to make decisions based on what the data was telling me, but also understanding that while this virus was something that was serious, it's also serious, like what they did in California, lock kids out of school for a year. That's deadly serious. It's serious when you destroy hundreds of thousands of businesses across this country, which many of these lockdown states do, and cost millions of jobs and destroy many more lives than that. And so what we try to do is say, okay, this is a virus that's impacting elderly people by and large. Let's focus our efforts there. And obviously we were the first state to put seniors first for vaccine. That was actually against CDC recommendations. CDC said it wasn't, quote, equitable to put seniors first. This was their initial recommendation because they said seniors aren't, quote, diverse enough. Are you kidding me? The virus is impacting elderly people more. And so we said, okay, my goal is not to engage in some type of political ideology with this. My job's to save lives. And if you get seniors the vaccine, you're going to save more lives. So what I would tell folks is, you've got to make the decision. You've got to look at the data yourself. Listen to some of these people. I mean, you shouldn't be closed-minded, but understand many of these, quote, experts have been wrong time and time again during this thing. And so ultimately, leadership is about making tough decisions, being willing to lean in against the media and the narratives and all the other nonsense that percolated in this country when COVID came. It's politically safer, I think, for some of these people to just hide behind the health bureaucrats, say, oh, well, they told me this is what I have to do, that's what I have to do. And when you buck that and when you actually think for yourself, people say, oh, you don't listen to experts, you don't do that. But ultimately, I think the decisions we made, one, we were the first state to protect nursing homes. We didn't send infected patients back to nursing homes like some of those other states did. We protected them. We actually set up COVID-only nursing homes so that if someone did get infected, you had a safe place for them to be without infecting the other seniors. We were the first state to say, we're going back to school and we're going back to work, and we did that, and we were the first large state in the country to have 100% of our parents have access to in-person schooling for K-12. And as I mentioned, we said when the vaccines come, we're putting seniors first. All of those decisions were the right decisions, but all of those decisions cut against what a majority of the bureaucrats and the, quote, experts said we should have done.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Governor. You know, you got a lot of pushback for your approach from the media, from other governors. So how did you know that you were making the right decision when you opened up? Because many people said it's too early.
So, look, at the end of the day, if you look at how people said you should handle pandemics prior to COVID, nobody advocated a perpetual lockdown. That was never in the cards. No one said you should lock kids out of school indefinitely. You know, if you look in CDC, Great Britain, all these places, they'd say, you know, if there's a flu pandemic, maybe you close the school for a week or two, but no one would say you would do it indefinitely. No one would say that people shouldn't be able to go to work or that businesses should be closed indefinitely. So this was all, I felt, you know, as we got into April, we started to get some data in real time here in the U.S. I felt that this was way overboard in terms of what made sense for our country and for our state. And I think the data was saying that some of those responses were not grounded in data. They were based more in panic. And I'm shocked that we're at this point and it's still a struggle for every parent in this country to get their kid into school. How could that possibly be the case? And so, you know, I understood what the data was telling us, but I also understood you can't sacrifice a generation of kids. You can't sacrifice people's livelihoods for policies which had never been tried in this country before. And so I felt the most prudent course of action was the course of action that we took.
Governor, JT works in the restaurant industry. He's got a question for you.
Hello, Governor. My name is JT. I am a director of business development for our family brands restaurants on the Gulf beaches. Our primary restaurant is Krabby Bill's on Indian Rocks Beach. Been there for 38 years. You know, a year ago, I had the privilege of speaking alongside you in St. Pete when we opened the state for Phase 3. And I'm going to tell you today what I told you then. I am so grateful, and I think we're all so blessed to have you at the helm, leading us through the pandemic and now successfully leading us out. You know, at the time when we went into lockdown, we as a business and people were beneficiaries of financial aid. That aid was meant to bridge us, to get us back on our feet, to get us on the road to recovery. And I can tell you with a lot of pride today and a testament to your leadership that we are well on our way. But one of the key things that's missing from that is people. So my question for you today is, what are your plans to get Floridians back into the workforce? No,
it's a great question. So fortunately, Florida, our unemployment rate is significantly less than the national average. It's 6% nationally. It's 4.7% in Florida. And that, mind you, is with, and we're in court today against the Biden administration. They closed the cruise line, CDC did, for over a year. They said last March, 2 weeks to figure out what was going on. And then they just kept it closed. So we're suing you, but that's one of my major industries here. Imagine if those were open, we'd have tens of thousands of more jobs. But what you're finding in all these different businesses, particularly hospitality, restaurant, is they can hire a certain level, but then there's certain positions that are just not being filled. And part of that is because of the financial assistance that's been provided. So what we said was, okay, you got to look for a job. You can't just get this assistance without actively seeking employment. Just by us making that announcement, some of these restaurants, I saw a news report this morning, a guy says he's got all these, his phones are ringing off the hook now because folks know you got to go do that. And so we're also looking to think about what could we do. I would rather give somebody a bonus for going back to work than pay them not to work.
And your unemployment is one of the lowest right now in the country. But I do want to switch to education. You've talked a lot about that. You did open schools really early. They opened last year. Many people said it couldn't be done. You did it. Diane is a former lawyer, and she has a question for you.
Good morning. Will support for STEM courses increase or remain the same for schools next year?
So it's a good question. STEM courses, science, technology, engineering, and math. We're really trying to focus on it in Florida, so we want to guide people there. And it's not just so you get a PhD in engineering. Some people will do that. You know, we believe we have a lot of jobs right out of high school, that if people have the skills that they need in some of these skilled trades, that they're able to go. For example, I was on the Space Coast of Florida a couple months ago, and they have an aviation maintenance and mechanics program. And so kids are doing it. They will get hired straight from high school by like Elon Musk and some of these people. So what we're trying to do is people can make decisions about what they want to do. But I think a lot of my generation was sold a bill of goods saying, unless you go to a 4-year brick and ivy college, you're not going to be successful. That's not true, okay? And if you are able... If you're able to provide people opportunities, yes, we want to produce people that are good in math and engineering that can go to the 4-year college. I think that's very important. But I also think there are a lot of these skills that used to be taught many, many decades ago, and then it kind of fell out of favor because the K-12 schools, particularly the high school, said, look, all our mission is to get everyone in college. Well, you got a generation of kids that went deep into debt. They get a degree in zombie studies from Shoehorn University, and they wonder why the heavens aren't parting for them when they get out, because they were told you just needed that piece of paper. And what we try to say is, look, a 4-year brick and ivy university is one way where you can get knowledge and skills needed to succeed, but it's not the only way. And for many people, it's not the best way. I have people getting credentialed in high school in welding and in some of these things. By the time they're like 22 years old, they're making 6-figure salaries. And guess what? They have no debt. No debt at all. So we really believe in a multifaceted approach to education. Now, in terms of STEM in the college, I've told our universities, focus on academic rigor, cut out the political ideology. We don't want these universities to be indoctrination centers. We want them to be places where students are going to go, they're going to gain some ways to think and apply themselves. And I think the more that you do that, one, the performance will be better, but I think there's a hunger amongst parents all across this country right now because they worry. They send their kid to college somewhere, and they end up just being exposed to rampant ideology. That's not what we want. That's really not worth the tax dollars from our state to be doing that. So we want to focus on rigor, and we want to do that. And also, just speaking of that, in our K through 12 schools, we're not allowing critical race theory in Florida.
I think every parent out there worries about their kids' education. Roger's got 13 grandkids, so he definitely cares. Roger, you have a question for the governor.
Yes, thank you, Governor. And unfortunately, none of my 13 grandchildren live in Florida.
Oh.
And they live in states...
They will someday.
I think you're right. But I'm concerned. I think what you've done is going to help the future of the kids and the future of Florida. But I'm concerned that the potential impact the illegal immigration could have on our students. There are reports that the federal government is sending hundreds of unaccompanied minors to states around the country, including Florida, I'm sure. What is that costing us, and is it straining the available resources?
That's a great question. So with illegal immigration, one, the federal government will sprinkle folks in. Now, it is at their cost. It doesn't cost the states at this juncture. But if they have the floodgates open and they're just releasing people on the southern border, well, wherever those folks end up, that is going to cost. the taxpayers. And so we want our schools to be available, obviously, for our citizens, but we don't want to have to provide all these services to people that aren't here legally. I mean, that's not good for taxpayers. It's not good for our society. In Florida, when I came into office a couple years ago, I said, yeah, we need to make sure we're tackling this. So we banned sanctuary cities in the state of Florida when I became governor. We also had agreements with the Trump administration so that when we have a criminal alien, the criminal alien was removed from the state and sent back. And it worked very well. And I'll tell you, the Trump border policies worked very well. Biden is undoing that right now. So you see this massive crisis that's happened, but he's doing even more than that. When I used to work with the Trump administration, if we had a criminal alien get convicted, they're in prison in Florida, when their sentence got up, federal government would come, take them, and remove them. Now Biden, when these criminal aliens are getting out of prison, finish their sentence, Biden is releasing them back into our society. And so we're working with local law enforcement to try to mitigate that. We think that that's reckless. We think that that puts our people at risk. But that is a choice. That's a deliberate choice by the Biden administration. And if you're not even willing to send home somebody who's committed a felony in your country, then you're basically saying you have a totally open border and that everyone should just pour in regardless of legal status. That is not the way a sovereign country behaves.
Yep. All right. Well, we got a lot more to get to. We got veterans. We got to get to religious liberty. We're going to tackle all that when we return. Stay with us.
Welcome back to beautiful Florida here in the Villages for a special edition of Spicer and Company, a town hall with Governor Ron DeSantis. And Governor, we want to talk about veterans now. I know that there is a large veterans community here in the Villages and a large veterans community here with us right now. If you have served, would you please stand so we can recognize you out in the audience and on stage? Thank you all for your service. As I said, I'm a military brat, so it's very kindred to my spirit, and appreciate all that you have given and sacrificed. And thank you, Governor, for your service as well, and Sean, you as well. Actually want to go to another Ron in the room. Ron, who is a veteran, would like to ask you a question.
Well, first, Governor, thank you for being here. We seriously appreciate you coming out, talking to us face to face, rather than hiding behind your desk. I'm sure that not everyone knows that you are a veteran of the U.S. Navy. Go Army! As a fellow veteran, and on behalf of the thousands of veterans that live here in the Villages, I want to thank you for your service.
Happy to do it.
My question, military related, could you comment briefly on what your military service taught you and what it has meant to you since then?
Well, it's a great question, and thank you for that. You know, I do think the motto of the Navy was honor, courage, and commitment. And when you're doing things, anything in life, but obviously if you're in office, you know, if you just live by those values, you're going to end up okay. And I think the folks that I serve with overwhelmingly upheld those values every day, sometimes in very difficult circumstances. You know, sometimes we'd have fun on shore duty, but I remember being in Fallujah and Ramadi back during the surge in Iraq. And not the best place in the world to be, for sure. And a lot of the guys I was serving with had been to Iraq and Afghanistan multiple times just in the previous few years. And so they put a lot on the line for the country. But at the end of the day, my view was when you wear the uniform, you're effectively writing a check payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including your life. And anyone that does that, that's a noble calling. And when you do it with honor and integrity, you're really following in the best traditions of this country. And so I think it's helped me with leadership. I think it's helped me with you know, understanding that if you're in a position of authority, that you have a special obligation to do it right. And so we've tried to do that, and I think it was a great experience. I never necessarily knew what I was going to do, but this was after 9/11. I think a lot of us felt that we needed to do our part, so we did it. I met some phenomenal people, and anyone that I ever interview for a job, if they have served in the military, that's a huge plus for me.
Well, it's...
Oh, and let me... I'm proud of this. So I just signed yesterday a school choice bill. We have more school choice in Florida than anywhere in the country. But for the first time, we said kids of active duty military, if you're serving in Florida, you're going to have access to these school choice scholarships regardless of whether there's a wait list or anything like that. Because if you're stepping up for us, we've got to step up for you and your family.
Well, it's National Police Week. You just signed bonuses here in Florida for first responders, police officers. Andrew is a former retired police chief.
Okay. He
served in the military. Andrew, you have a question for the governor.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Governor, and thank you for the bonus for the first responders. We appreciate that. Yep. My son happens to be a firefighter in a department not too far from here, so I know he appreciates the extra money. Thank you for that. Like Sean said, I'm a retired police chief. I had almost 40 years of law enforcement service. And even before the defund, abolish the police movement, I and many of my colleagues were having a hard time finding qualified candidates for the law enforcement profession. Just not a profession that people are drawn to any longer. It's even more prevalent now in some of the major cities. They're having a very hard time finding qualified candidates, and you have thousands of officers retiring because of the anti-police atmosphere. Doesn't appear to be a problem yet here in Florida, but I think it will be soon. What can we do to attract and maintain quality law enforcement applicants to stay in the profession to keep Floridians safe?
Well, it's a great question. Thank you. Where were you serving at as a police chief?
In Taos Ski Valley, New Mexico, and I retired as a captain from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, great. Yeah, some good folks there. So, well, the first thing we can do is have a governor that stands by law enforcement. It makes a difference, and I'm happy to do that. Second thing is, and I actually don't think it's going to be a problem in Florida, because what's happening is people that get alienated with the lack of support they see in some of these cities, a lot of them are applying in Florida because they know they're valued here. And so one of the reasons we wanted to do these bonuses was to recognize the fact that they had to show up for duty every day during COVID. There were some people who were able to work on Zoom and all that, and God bless you if you can, but you couldn't do that if you were in law enforcement. You needed to show up. You can't arrest a criminal on Zoom. You got to be there. So they were there day in, day out for us, which we wanted to thank them for that. But even more, they had horrible treatment across this country the last year with all that's going on. So we wanted to do that as a token of our appreciation. And then we wanted to say, you see some of the things that were happening in Minneapolis, all these places. That's not happening in Florida. When we had the protests last summer, I called out the National Guard, say we're not having riots, we're not going to do that. But I also understood you can't just be on defense, you got to go on offense. So we passed the strongest anti-rioting, pro-police bill in the country this year. And that bill says a couple things that I signed. One, if a local government tries to defund law enforcement, the state of Florida is putting that funding back. We're not going to let you defund the police. We're also not going to let you get away with shirking your responsibilities to protect the public. So if you have a riot and you tell police to stand down, and your damage or your property's damaged, you sue the local government for your damages because they're the ones that were responsible for not keeping the peace. And then finally, we said, if you riot, if you loot, if you assault people, if you attack law enforcement, we're not just going to bring you in, take your mugshot, and put you back on the street. You're going to jail, and you're going to spend time in jail.
All right, well, we want to switch topics now to religious freedom. It's something that many people have been worried about across this country during COVID. A lot of churches shut down, and as we know, churches are places where people seek refuge for many different reasons. And we want to go to a pastor who has a question for you, Pastor George, who has a church here in Florida.
Thank you, Governor. My name is Scott George. I'm pastor of Pinecastle United Methodist Church in Orlando. I'm also the state director for Project Opioid. You and the First Lady have been passionate advocates for our mission here in Florida to mobilize leaders to solve one of the greatest health crises of our time, opioid overdoses. As you know, one of the major impacts of COVID-19 on Floridians has been the crisis of opioid overdoses. Why is it important for the faith and business communities to address this epidemic and not expect the government to do it all?
Well, I think it's a great question, and that's exactly, the First Lady really deserves a lot of credit. We're fortunate in Florida. We're fortunate in Florida that of 50 states have the best First Lady in the country. And so, she's really taking this on as one of the passions. But from the beginning, what we said is bureaucracies are not going to be able to solve the problem. If you don't have the community involved, if you don't have people that are trustworthy involved, yeah, we can put money behind it, but ultimately, you're not going to be very effective. And so having the business community involved has been very helpful. But to me, the most important is to have our churches involved and our faith-based community involved. I mean, those are the folks. I mean, when you're in an addiction, or you need some strength, and having family, friends, all that, but also trusting in a higher power, that leads people to the light. And so throughout this whole time with COVID, you know, I said churches are open. We never closed churches in Florida. Some of them decided to do remote, but that was their decision. In many parts of this country, you had government shuttering churches by force of law. Some of these governments would shut the church but open the casino, or shut the church but open the liquor stores. So we believed it was essential from the very beginning. And you know what's happened? We've had church services. You know, it's been fine. We actually just had, I saw Sean mention the Super Bowl and all that. You know, a few weeks ago, we had the first full capacity indoor sporting event with UFC in Jacksonville. We did it. It was fine. Everyone had a good time. And so I think that the faith community is really the key to this. And I'm a governor that wants to embrace those relationships. We lean on the faith community to help advance things that are good for Florida. And I just really, really am glad that Florida didn't go down the road of some of these lockdown states where they seem to be targeting a lot of their fire on the faith community. That is wrong.
Governor, I want to ask, sometimes this can be a tough question for politicians. We've talked a lot, education, veterans, religious liberty, COVID. If you look back on your tenure so far as governor, what grade do you give yourself and your administration?
You know, I don't really do that, but what I will say is this. There's not a governor in the country that's worked harder than we have for the 2.5 years I've been governor. We work every day around the clock. And I think you see that. Obviously, the COVID has been so important. We talked about the schools, the businesses, the seniors for vaccines, protecting nursing homes, very important. But if you look, we've done more school choice in any state in the country, maybe anybody in history of our country, just since I've been governor. I mentioned we banned sanctuary cities. You know, we also are the first state to take on big tech censorship. I'm going to be signing that bill into law very soon. If you look at the way we conducted the 2020 election, we counted 11 million votes by midnight, 99% counted, reported, very transparent. But we also said we're not standing pat there. We're on offense. We just did a strong election integrity bill that I signed into law last week. We have some of the best infrastructure in the country. You know, New York's budget, they have millions of fewer people than us. Their budget's over twice the size of Florida's budget, and yet our roads are much better. Our infrastructure is much better. Obviously, we're growing, so we're doing more. We've done more than any governor in terms of helping our water resources and water quality for our fishermen, our boaters, all the stuff that makes Florida unique. And then I'm going to sign into law very soon. We're one of the first states to crack down on the influence of the Communist Party of China, these Confucius Institutes. We're doing it. And throughout this whole time of COVID, We never touched one penny from our rainy day fund. Our reserves are larger today than when I became governor, and so we've got a lot of good momentum. And so what I would say is, I don't know how you grade, but what I would say is I worked harder than any governor, and I'm going to continue to work harder than any governor for our state.
I believe that deserves a pretty good grade. Well, I think we have time for one more question, and we have Rich, who works in the healthcare industry, and he has a question for you, Governor, about vaccines.
First of all, Governor, I think you get an A+.
Okay. I'll let you, but I did an event for the millionth senior we did it live on TV, and I had a 100-year-old World War II veteran. They showed the shot, we were all clapping. He started, they were kind of interviewing him, and he just unilaterally said, I want to say one more thing. And we were thinking, like, God bless America, whatever. He's like, Florida has the best doggone governor in this country. And I was like, hey, I'll take that.
Well, Governor, I want to thank you on behalf of all of us for your Seniors First program with the vaccinations. My question is this. There's been rumors around that we may need a second or a booster shot, even if we've been fully vaccinated. Will you continue with the seniors program if that's the case?
So the question about the boosters, I don't know yet. We hear a lot of different stuff. What I can tell you, though, is when the vaccines first came out, obviously the seniors wanted it. We have 4.5 million seniors. We were getting 200,000 vaccines a week initially, 250,000. You do the math on that. It just was. Now we're at a situation where we have a surplus of vaccines because 80+% of seniors have gotten it. We're really at the point, some seniors just don't want to take it. We're not doing vaccine mandates, okay, or vaccine passports. So that's totally fine. It's your choice. So we've gotten to really where we wanted to protect our elderly residents. Now you're in younger groups, and the uptake is less. Quite frankly, the way the federal government's handled the Johnson & Johnson has been a total disaster, scared a lot of people unnecessarily. And then when people in these bureaucrats up in DC say, well, even if you're fully vaccinated, you got to wear multiple masks and you should never go to a restaurant. Well, understand that message you're sending to particularly young people is that the vaccines aren't effective. Because if the vaccines are effective, there's no basis to tell people to wear 2 masks or any of that. So I think that what we found ourselves in now is, fortunately, these are mostly very low-risk people, and they're just saying, I'm not sure I'm going to do it. So we have a surplus of vaccines. So my sense would be, if there would be a booster necessary, we're going to be swimming in this stuff going forward. And so I have no doubt that there will be enough vaccines. And if there, for some reason, we have to make those decisions, of course, we would prioritize our seniors for that as well.
All right. Well, we got more to get to with Governor Ron DeSantis live from the Villages when we come back.
To a special edition of Spicer and Company here in Florida at the Villages, a town hall with Governor Ron DeSantis. We want to get to know the governor a little more in a fun way, but first, we have a question we want to ask.
Governor, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the Republican Party, if not the entire country, is buzzing about Ron DeSantis. You're 42 years old. You're the youngest governor in the country. I checked the website. Your campaign account has almost $32 million. Obviously, a lot of people like what you're doing. They want to support you. You're up for re-election in 2022. So tell us, what does Ron DeSantis' future look like?
Well, look, we think that the future of Florida is really bright, but we also tell people 2018, I won by a 0.5 percentage point. It was a very close election. And I can tell you, sometimes people will say, oh, the Realtor of the Year for Florida should be Michigan's governor, New York's governor, because they're driving all these people here. I say, wait a minute. If I had not won in 2018, you guys would be wishing you had the governor of Michigan or New York compared to what we would have had. This state would be a total disaster. We would have had kids locked out of school. We would have had the Cuomo nursing home policy, would have hurt a lot of our seniors. They would not have done Seniors First for vaccines. And I think we'd have the highest unemployment rate in the country, because a California lockdown on a service-based economy like Florida, it would have hurt a lot of low and middle income people. So we believe 2022 gives the state the opportunity to really solidify Florida's direction as a leader, as a place, a free state, an oasis of freedom. And we have had a lot of people go, but people will go to my website, rondesantis.com, and they say, how can I help? They'll pitch in donations, all this other stuff. So I think that they really, really appreciate what we've done. And I believe Florida's leadership has also helped other states. Because I think if Florida had not done what we have done, you might not have seen Texas do what they did. And I think you would have seen even worse lockdowns in the Northeast over the winter. But I think a lot of those people are saying, hey, wait a minute. There's worse COVID up here than in Florida, and yet they're open. Why would you lock down? So I think that we've done well for the state. I think we've set an example for the country. But I do think 2022 is going to be very, very important for this state's vitality going forward.
All right. Well, we want to do a little bit of a rapid fire round with you real quick. So you just say one of the words and we're going to go through
I know it's tough for politicians. One word answer, Governor. All right?
All right. Do you prefer the pool or the beach?
Oh, beach.
Okay. Tennis or golf?
Golf.
All right. Putt or drive?
Drive.
Oranges or grapefruits?
Oranges.
Disney or Orlando?
You mean Universal?
Or Disney or Universal, thank you.
Disney.
Oh. All right, this is for you, Ron. Army or Navy?
Oh, that's easy. Navy.
All right. You made me do it, Ron.
Although I'll tell you what, when I was in Congress, we would do the Academy nominations, and I would always tell the West Point cadets, guys, you're going to be great institution. You're going to lose to Navy for 4 years, but you're going to do it. I can't say that anymore. I mean, Army's done much better, and so, you know, we really want to start getting back to where we're racking up the W's.
All right, neat or messy?
Well, it depends. I mean, I have 3 kids under 4 years and under, so messiness is kind of a part of our lives on a daily basis. One quick story. So we moved into the governor's mansion when I got inaugurated. My son was 9 months old. We hadn't had a chance to get him baptized yet. So we said, you know what? I'm going to have family and friends for the inauguration. Let's get sworn in. I'll give the speech. We'll go to the mansion. We'll baptize him. I baptized him with water that we brought back from the Sea of Galilee in Israel. So it was really cool. But it was in just a normal water bottle like a Zephyr Hills. And so when we were done, we kind of left it there. We weren't used to having people pick up for us. But the mansion, there's a staff that cleans up everything. They didn't know it was any different water, so they spilled it out, and we lost the rest of our Sea of Galilee water. And we only had 2 kids at the time, and I said, my wife doesn't have another bun in the oven, but if we have a third, I'm out of Sea of Galilee water. So people in Israel went to the Sea of Galilee, did it, shipped it to the United States. So now I have Sea of Galilee water for Mamie.
All right, I got 2 more, and then we're done. You ready? Crockett or Tubbs?
Oh, gosh. Neither.
All right, then this is it. Flip-flops or Crocs?
Oh, flip-flops.
All right.
I mean, I grew up in Florida. You know, we wore jean shorts and T-shirts, flip-flops. I showed up. I had never been to New England. I got recruited to play baseball at Yale. First day of school, I have jean shorts and a T-shirt showing up on that campus. And I was like Florida man, totally out of place, was not received very well. Major culture shock for me, I can tell you that.
All right. Well, we want to thank everyone at the Villages. We want to thank you for being part of it, and all of you at home for watching this. Governor DeSantis, thank you for coming out for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and thanks for coming to Florida. Great to have you guys.
All righty. Thanks for being part of our company.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.